I'm a simple college student living alone in an apartment. I was very enthusiastic about the release of Pokemon Heart Gold/Soul Silver here in the States. I have purposely locked myself out of all media and the internet aside for school purposes. That means no 4chan, no V, no Bulbapedia, etc. As I was busy with the school year and being poor at the time, I wasn't able to buy Soul Silver on its launch date. After my school year ended, I ordered Soul Silver on Amazon. However, it would take a week for it to arrive. I decided that during that time I would replay my Crystal version on my Game Boy Color. I realized that long ago my mom threw it away because I told her the save went dead, and I was very upset about it then. She also threw away my Silver version, so all I had was my Game Boy Color. As such, I set out to GameStop and bought a used Silver version, as it was the only Pokemon game they had left for the GBC. $10, fairly cheap. I went home and started it up for a nostalgia trip. However, that's where things started getting bizarre, and most likely the reason why you read this. The Game Freak logo started up as normal, but it just froze there. I thought the cart was just errored or something, so I turned it off and on. But the same thing happened again. I tried pressing A and start over and over, and all of the buttons. Eventually, the logo vanished and there was a black screen for about 5 seconds. Suddenly, rather than going to the usual menu screen, I was already in the game in a previous saved file, which was odd as I was expecting all of these carts to have been wiped by the poor battery. Either way, I wasn't complaining, as I would have chosen the continue option to see what the previous guy did anyways. First off, I checked his trainer information. His name was just ... He didn't have much originality. I checked his profile and apparently he had 999 hours put into the game. With all 16 badges, 99,999 Pokédollars, and all 251 Pokemon in the Pokédex. Seeing as he apparently had Mew and Celebi logged also, I'm guessing he either used a Game Genie or was a really hardcore Pokemon player back in the day. I checked his Pokemon to see what a badass team he had, and to my surprise I saw 5 unknowns and a 6th Pokemon named Hurry. I'm thinking that this must be some cruel joke by the person who last played this game, but I decided to check the profiles of those Pokemon anyways. As expected, there were different letters of unknown, all level 5. I was a bit shaky with my unknown alphabet at the time, but I identified the word, spelled out to be leave. As for the 6th Pokemon, it turned out to be a Cyndaquil. Mind you, this is before there were individualized Pokemon icons. The Cyndaquil looked normal, but it was level 5 with only 1 HP left with only 2 attacks, Leer and Flash. I don't know why they named him Hurry, but at the time I just disregarded it. The most eerie thing was that despite my volume being at max, none of the Pokemon he had said their usual cries. Just pure silence. Having enough of the team, I closed it. I was parked at what appeared to be a room inside Bellsprout Tower. However, for some reason there were no NPCs around. Even more eerie was that the pillar in the middle didn't move at all, as if it was just leaning on its side. There was no music at all and there was no exit or ladder, or at least I thought there wasn't. I walked around for a few minutes but couldn't seem to find a way out. This was certainly not a room I've seen in the Bellsprout Tower before. I tried checking my items for an escape rope, but the bag was completely empty. There wasn't any wild Pokemon either. Finally, I managed to find a ladder which turned out to be behind the pillar. The screen turned black and the music finally started playing. I had a sudden chill as I recognized that the melody I heard was the theme you hear when you listen to the radio at the Alph Ruins, where the Unknown are at. I immediately realized that it wasn't a loading transition, but rather I was in a dark room and would need flash. Before I took care of that though, I immediately checked my Pokégear to change the radio to something more pleasant, but it turns out that there was no radio card, nor a phone, nor time cards. There was only a map card in which Gold, ... from earlier, and I will call him Gold from now on since it's simpler, was just walking in a midst of black. I remembered that Cyndaquil had Flash, so I turned off my Pokegear and used it. I didn't see any message saying Hurry has used Flash or anything like that. The room just became lit, and I soon regretted it. The room was a chilling blood red with a linear gray path heading south. The ladder I used to go up/down was not there at all. I had no choice but to head south. The screen got darker every 20 steps I made, until I finally made it to the end, which appeared to be a sign. I read the sign which said "Turn back now." Suddenly I was asked to answer yes or no, but there was no question asked. I chose yes as I do not know what it was asking, and the screen went black again. I heard a ladder climbing sound. The unknown radio music stopped and in a few seconds was replaced with the not as creepy Pokeflute radio music. I was in another dark room, but I held my breath and used Flash again. Suddenly it said that Hurry has fainted, which was odd since I recalled that there was no status conditions like poison on him, and I clearly wasn't in a battle. I checked my Pokemon quickly and suddenly he was no longer in my party. In fact, after a bit of investigating, none of my Pokemon were there at all, but instead all replaced with a level 10 unknown. I did the same thing as before and spelled out the unknown. My then team spelled, "He died." Either way, after that creepy change, the room was lit to reveal myself in a very small room that appeared to be only 4 squares big. The walls of that room were gray bricks, as if I was inside something that was hollowed out. Outside that room appeared to be a bunch of graves similar to the ones in Pokemon Red and Blue. I've walked around that small room and pressed A, but nothing happened. I've already concluded that this was clearly a hacked game and some sadistic person sold it to GameStop. However, my curiosity kept me going. I checked the trainer profile of Gold again, only to find out that the sprite of him was missing its arms. He also seemed to appear less smug, but rather more sad and empty in a way that I don't know how to describe. For some reason, it also said that he had 24 badges, which was impossible. After a few minutes of aimless wandering, my character suddenly spun into the escape rope spinning animation. Instead of flying up though, my character spun downwards slowly, as if sinking. After that screen, the music stopped. After finally landing, the overworld sprite of Gold is colored differently now. Instead of the usual red color he dons, he appears completely white now, including his skin. It was as if he came straight from the colorless Game Boy games, but placed into a colored background on the Game Boy Color. I checked his profile and now he was as white as his overworld sprite. He lost his legs, and had what appeared to be bloody tears from his eyes. It also said he now had 32 badges. I also checked my Pokemon, which this time contained 5 unknowns and a level 100 Celebi without a nickname. The unknown were this time level 15, and spelled out dying. I checked the Celebi's profile. It was a shiny Celebi, except there was only half of the sprite. 1 leg, 1 arm, 1 eye. It only had 1 attack. Perish Song. The area I was in itself was the Sprout Tower with the immobile pillar as before, except everything was apparently red now. I walked north for what felt like forever. Eventually, I finally encountered some generic men and women NPCs. They were all lined up to the side, just facing the long slantish pillar in the middle. They were also white, and nothing happened when I tried to speak to them. I kept on going north until eventually the pillar finally appeared chopped off, with a transparent red in that spot. I went up to red and without even pressing A, I was suddenly engaged and finally in a battle. The unknown radio music played again, but backwards. Gold's battle back sprite matched his front one with bloody eyes, white skin and lack of arms, while red sprite was the same as before in GSC, except transparent. The text simply said, "Wants to battle," as if he had no name. And both of us had only 1 Pokemon each, which is weird as I swore I had 6 with the unknowns. My shiny Celebi came out, conveniently with half a sprite for the back sprite also. The shiny noise and animation was different, as the sounds it made sound like multiple screech attacks used consecutively. Red sent out a seemingly normal male Pikachu, except he was level 255 and his sprite seemed sad and had tears in its eyes. Rather than the usual fight item Pokemon run menu, I was only given the option to use the attacks. Since Celebi only has one, I chose it. Naturally, since Pikachu was level 255, he went first. Pikachu used Curse, lowering his speed and increasing his other stats. I'm not even sure if Pikachu could use Curse. Celebi used Perish Song. In 3 turns, both Pokemon get KO'd. Not like I had a choice. At this point, it didn't even go back to the fight menu, as the battle just continued without me. Also note that there were no animations at all for some reason. Pikachu used Flail, which didn't do much damage despite his level and boost as his health was maxed. Celebi used Perish Song. Nothing happened as it was already used. Pikachu used Frustration, which did a ton of damage, knocking Celebi down to less than 10 HP. Celebi used Pain Split, which surprised me as Celebi didn't even have that attack in the first place. Now Celebi and Pikachu had about 150 HP. Pikachu used Mean Look. Not like that did anything. As expected, due to the effects of Perish Song, my Celebi fainted. Except in the text it said Celebi has died, and instead of the ordinary drop-off screen animation, the Celebi back sprite just vanished. For some reason the Pikachu was still up even with Perish Song and it didn't count as my loss. Pikachu used one more different attack beyond the 5 attack limit. Pikachu used Destiny Bond. Afterwards it said Pikachu has died, with a slow fade-out animation. Apparently I was the winner as the transparent red sprite showed up and said, ... At that point I just freaked out, as that transparent red sprite was suddenly beheaded, leaving nothing but his transparent body. The battle then ended at that point and faded out along with the music. I'm back in the overworld, with another change to the gold sprite. He's now as transparent as Red's overworld sprite. I quickly checked Gold's profile, where this time the only thing that remained of him was his head, with transparent skin. The head was zoomed in a bit, showing a black void in his eyes. It now stated that he had 40 badges. I then backed out and checked my Pokemon. They were all level 20 shiny unknown, which when spelled out, read no more. I was at what I now know is next to the end. There was apparently no music playing, but for some reason I still felt like something was there that could be heard. I was back in my room in New Barktown. Maybe finally I got to play this game properly. But who was I kidding? I knew that that sadistic person must have done something. I walked around my room to interact with things, as I'm a bit afraid to go down the stairs to see what was awaiting down there. I didn't really walk though, as while the background was moving, Gold was not moving his transparent limbs at all while doing so, just floating like those ghosts you see in Diamond and Pearl. As expected, the radio, computer, and TV did not work, so I had no choice but to go down the stairs. I ended up in the same lower level room of my house. Everything appeared normal except Mom wasn't home. After failing to interact with anything in this room, I decided to go outside. To my surprise, that door leading outside at the south didn't work, and instead I just walked straight through it to a void. I continued moving south to see what was going on. My house slowly vanished as I headed further south. It was creepy as when I entered the void, the outline on Gold's transparent sprite turned white to contrast with the pitch black. Eventually I reached a white area and Gold's sprite turned black and transparent again. I continued south without thinking of stopping at all. After a long trek south, I finally encountered something. It was Gold's regular sprite. I talked to it and he said, "Goodbye forever," notably with a space in between the forever and dots. Then he vanished. As that happened, it said "used nightmare," which at that point I would not deny that being possible. Gold did another escape rope animation, spinning slowly downwards like before. I'm now back into that small hollowed out room surrounded by graves earlier. Or at least I say I was back there, as there's no sprite anymore. I tried to walk around, but nothing moved. Not even wall bumping noises. I checked my trainer profile with absolutely no gold sprite left. It said I had 0 badges and all the pictures of the Johto gym leaders at the bottom were replaced with skulls. I checked my Pokemon, which were all level 25 unknown. As expected, it spelled out a phrase that I dared to read. I'm dead. As soon as I went back to the overworld, the room I supposedly was in was then covered with the same blocks as the walls. I then figured out what exactly that room was when the final text said, R.I.P. The room was a big grave surrounded by other graves. Gold had already been dead. He died presumably a few years after he defeated Red. He was a young trainer who, despite his efforts in collecting so many badges and attempts at becoming a Pokemon master, was still unable to avoid the inevitable fate of death, and his efforts were eventually forgotten by the next generation. I was unable to escape from that text no matter what I pressed. I tried resetting the game and the same thing happened, at which I then finally decided to give up on that horrible nightmare. After that experience, I will never look at the gimmick unknown the same way again. They say that only the first generation has folktales and legends, but the second generation has shown me how unpleasant the truth can be. I eventually enjoyed Soul Silver immensely, but I still can't unthink what that rigged game has told me.